They told Hailey that a 200-pound Boerboel would take over her entire life. None of them had any idea how right they were, or how grateful she would one day be that it happened. Because 11 months after she stopped her car on a dark rural road for a dog nobody else would even slow down for, that very same dog would become the only reason she found the strength to stand back up. And I mean that literally. Hailey Doyle was 31, lived alone in a small house in Kirkland, Washington, and measured her whole life in miles. She ran before work, ran after work, ran weekends through the wet green trails above the lake. Running was how she thought, how she coped, how she felt most like herself. She was independent to a fault, the kind of person who hated asking for help so badly she would carry 4 bags of groceries up the stairs in one trip to avoid a second one. She did not know it yet, but that stubborn, self-reliant version of Hailey was about to need more help than she had ever needed in her life, and it was going to arrive on 4 enormous paws. She found Moose on a Wednesday night that had no business going well. It was 11:47, raining sideways, and she was driving home down a dark stretch of SR 202 outside Redmond when something huge appeared in her headlights, standing dead center in the road. She stood on the brakes. The car stopped 6 feet from a massive fawn-colored dog with a black mask and a body like a small bear, soaked through, a chewed-off length of rope still knotted around his neck. He did not run. He just stood there in the rain and looked at her through the windshield, like he had been waiting in that exact spot for the one car that would actually stop. Hailey got out into the downpour. The 200-pound dog walked straight to her, leaned his entire sodden weight against her legs, and let out a long breath that fogged in the cold air. She opened the back door. He climbed in like he had been doing it his whole life. Nobody thought it was a good idea. Her brother Dev told her a dog that size in a house that small was insane. The vet put his weight at 200 pounds, his age around 3, found no chip and no owner anywhere, and said the rope burn around his neck told its own story. Her neighbor asked, only half joking, whether she really was sure it was safe to sleep in the same house as something that big. Hailey named him Moose because, of course she did, and within a week he had taken over everything: the couch, the bed, the entire doorway to the bathroom. He followed her from room to room and leaned on her at every opportunity, and was, despite 200 pounds of muscle and a head like a cinder block, terrified of the smoke detector and deeply suspicious of the toaster. He was the easiest, gentlest, most devoted creature she had ever known. For 3 good months, life with Moose was simple and easy. And then a driver ran a red light on Hailey's way home from work. I can see you're still here and you still haven't subscribed. And honestly, that stings a little. Hit subscribe. What Moose did during the hardest year of Hailey's life is the entire reason I am telling you any of this. The other car came through the intersection at full speed and hit Hailey's driver's side door. She woke up in Evergreen Hospital 2 days later with a fractured pelvis, a badly broken leg, and a spinal injury the surgeons described in careful, hedging language that all added up to one terrifying word: maybe. Maybe she would walk normally again. Maybe she would not. The months ahead would be a wheelchair, then a walker, then a long and uncertain climb through physical therapy, and not one person on her care team would promise her where it ended. For a woman who had measured her entire life in miles, the math was almost unbearable. She lay in that hospital bed and could not stop thinking about one single thing: not the pain, not the surgeries. Moose, who was waiting at home, who had no idea where she had gone, who had already been left once before by people who never came back.
Dev looked after Moose when she was in the hospital, and he told her later that the dog barely ate for 9 days, that he just lay by the front door with his chin flat on the floor watching it. When Hailey finally came home in a wheelchair almost 2 weeks later, Moose heard the car in the driveway and made a sound Dev had never heard a dog make before. She rolled through the front door and 200 pounds of Boerboel folded himself down onto the floor in front of her chair, pressed his huge head into her lap, and stayed there, shaking, for almost a full hour. He would not be moved. And from that moment on, the dog who had been left behind on a rainy road quietly decided that he was never going to leave anyone ever again. She had spent her whole life believing that needing someone was a kind of weakness. Moose spent that first hour home quietly teaching her it was the exact opposite. What followed was the hardest year of Hailey's life, and Moose was beside her for every single minute of it. When she did her floor exercises, he lay down next to her on the mat, close enough to touch. When she finally graduated from the wheelchair to a walker, he learned, without a single person teaching him, to walk on her weak side at the exact slow pace she could manage, a steady 200-pound wall she could reach out and steady herself against whenever her balance gave way. Her physical therapist called him the best mobility aid she had ever seen on 4 legs. If you have ever had to rebuild yourself from the ground up, then you already know that the hardest part is not the pain. It is the loneliness of it, the long, quiet hours that nobody else ever sees. Hailey was not alone for a single one of them. Every rep, every fall, every small and humiliating little victory, there was a giant fawn head resting on her knee, telling her to try it just one more time. She kept count, the way runners count, because counting was the one piece of her old self she still had. 41 days in the wheelchair, 63 on the walker, 209 physical therapy sessions across that single year, and Moose came to every one the clinic would allow him into, lying in the corner of the gym with his chin on his paws, watching her like a coach who had bet everything on one athlete. The staff started calling him by name. So did the other patients. A little boy relearning to walk after his own accident used to aim for Moose at the end of the parallel bars the very same way Hailey did, because somehow it was easier to walk toward 200 pounds of patient, waiting love than toward an empty metal rail. There was a night she very nearly gave up. It was 2:09 in the morning, 8 months in, and she had fallen trying to get to the kitchen on her own, too proud to wake her brother, and she could not get herself back up. She sat on the cold floor in the dark and finally let herself cry the way she had been refusing to cry for 8 straight months, the ugly, exhausted crying of a person who is genuinely no longer sure she can do this anymore. And Moose came. He did not bark and he did not panic. He lay down on the floor beside her, pressed the full warm weight of himself against her back, and then he did the thing that broke her open completely. He braced. He planted those 200 pounds, locked his legs, and waited, offering her the only thing he had to give, a body solid enough to climb. Hailey wrapped both arms around his neck, and inch by aching inch, using a dog as her anchor, she pulled herself up off that floor. Something shifted after that night. Not in her legs, in her. She stopped fighting the help and started leaning on it, and the help had a name and a tail and a deep rumbling snore. 6 weeks later, in the physical therapy gym, with Moose lying at the far end of the parallel bars and watching her like she was the only thing in the entire world, Hailey let go of the rails and took 4 unassisted steps across the floor to her dog. 4 steps. It does not sound like much unless you have spent a year being told you might never take them again. She reached him and dropped down and buried her face in his neck, and the therapist, who had seen 1,000 patients, had to turn around and pretend to check something on a clipboard. Hailey would remember those 4 steps for the rest of her life. The squeak of her sneakers on the gym floor, the single heavy thump of Moose's tail when she reached him, the way he let out a breath like he had been holding it the entire way across. She kept walking after that, a cane and then nothing at all. Dev, who had insisted a dog that big was a terrible idea, now calls Moose the best decision her sister ever made. The neighbor, who had worried about sleeping under the same roof as him, now waves him over for a biscuit every single morning. Some bonds are forged in the easy years, and some are forged in the year that everything falls apart. And the second kind never, ever come undone. That was Hailey and Moose. He had been thrown away on a dark road by people who decided he was simply too much. He turned out to be exactly, precisely, perfectly enough. Today, Hailey runs again, not far and not fast, and not the way she used to, but she runs, on the same wet green trails above the lake, and a 200-pound Boerboel runs beside her the entire way, grinning that ridiculous open-mouthed grin, leaning into her at every stop sign like he still cannot quite believe she came back to him. In the evenings, she sits with him on the couch he claimed as his own a long time ago, and she presses her cheek against his enormous head, and he leans into her, and neither of them ever needs to say the thing they both already know. She stopped her car for him on the worst night of his life. He carried her through the worst year of hers. They are even now. If anything, they are far more than even. Strangers on the trail still step to the far side when they see the sheer size of him. Hailey just smiles because she knows something they do not. The biggest dog on the path is the gentlest soul she has ever met, and he is the reason she is on that path at all. because the dogs the world calls too big, too much, too dangerous to be worth the trouble are so often the ones carrying the most love and finding the fewest people willing to take it. We drive past them on dark roads and we tell ourselves it is not our problem, and we keep going. But every once in a great while, somebody stops. And sometimes the thing you pull out of the rain turns out to be the exact thing that will one day refuse to let you stay down on the floor. So tell me honestly, would you have stopped your car on a dark road on a 200-pound dog standing in the pouring rain? Or would you have steered around him and kept on driving? Tell me in the comments.